Look at these two cups. At first glance, you may not notice a lot of difference between them, but one is skinnier than the other. That is not an accident. That is very much by design. Las Vegas is a place that is full of secrets and under the table information. Behind each big win in the casino, every wild party, and all the amazing performances, there's an entire operation going on that the public does not get to see. But today, I'm going to peel back the curtain and reveal some of the things that Las Vegas hospitality workers will never tell you. And oh man, I got some stories to share in this one. So let's get into it. This one is rough, but it fits perfectly with what we're talking about in this video. And it is about the amount of people who choose to end their lives on casino property. This is something you might see on social media every so often, but don't count on seeing it regularly on the mainstream media. Local news agencies will not report on this because they're worried that it will scare people away from wanting to come to Las Vegas. The unfortunate reality is that this does happen, and probably more often than you realize. Whether someone OD'd from a substance that they put in their body, or whether they chose to jump off the parking garage because they just gambled away their entire family savings. It does happen, it is unfortunate, and it very rarely ever makes it out. Now we're talking about how many chips you would have to cash in at one time at the cashier's cage in order for them to ask you to show a photo ID for the money. I learned about this before I moved here, but was here on a visit where I met up with an independent nightclub host who had a group that he was taking out for the night who had bottle service at a club here in town. After dinner, but before going to the club, the group wanted to go and gamble. So they went and played either craps or roulette. And they actually ended up doing well. So they ended up doing well, winning some money, and the guy with the money, at the end of it, had about $10,000 in chips he needed to cash in. What he did was he gave $2,000 each to several people, including me. And the reason he said he did that was because if you go to cash in more than that at the cage, he said they get weird about it. That was obviously just his perspective or his opinion or from whatever experience he had with that matter. But the reason casinos set any kind of limit like that is definitely for security purposes. Yes, casinos in Las Vegas do get robbed, and it's absolutely no secret that the cashier's cage is where the money is handled. So in order to prevent anyone from potentially planning a robbery or any kind of theft or fraud or anything along those lines, the cage employees inside the casinos will not tell you how much money you can cash in chips without having to show an ID. There's a variety of things you can see when you first walk into your hotel room that would be concerning. But one thing that nobody wants to see, and we can all agree on, are bed bugs. Because bed bugs are such a pain to get rid of, and obviously not a good look for any hotel, do not expect any of the hotel employees to tell you if bed bugs have been found on property. What you may hear them say is there's a possible pest or insect problem, but they're not going to specify. If you do happen to get a call from the front desk mentioning a pest problem, they'll probably say something like this. Mr. Orth, we've gotten a report of a possible pest problem in the suite next to yours. Would it be okay if we move you to another suite and launder your clothes for you? That way, they're not officially confirming any kind of pest problem to you. They're keeping it vague for a reason. But you can pretty much take a guess that if they call you, they offer to move your rooms, and they offer to clean your items for you, you can probably figure out what's going on. Tipping in Las Vegas, AKA a gratuity, is a large part of the culture here. Now this next one is going to be about how much of an auto gratuity for housekeeping actually goes directly to the housekeeper. This is something that I have only seen from the Sahara Hotel and Casino over at the north end of the Strip. And this goes back to at least 2021 when I did a video on it then. As of the making of this video, Sahara's website still states a daily housekeeping auto gratuity of $1.99 will be added to your room unless you opt out at the time of your hotel check-in. I asked on social media how much of this goes to housekeeping, but got no response. And I doubt any of the frontline staff knows, because that is a decision that is made by the management. You can do whatever you wish, but I would prefer to just leave a cash tip in the room myself. Nightlife is obviously a huge part of Las Vegas hospitality, and these nightclubs, bars, and lounges, they've got a trick or two up their sleeve that they use to get you to spend more money. Now, there's no way to know how many spots actually do what I'm about to show you, but for the ones that do it, it's pretty smart. So here it is. Look at these two cups. At first glance, you may not notice a lot of difference between them. You even hold them next to each other, you see the same height, but one is skinnier than the other. That is not an accident. That is very much by design. If you are a general admission guest, you're going to get the skinnier cup when you order your drink from the bar or from a regular table. However, if you're a bottle service guest, you are going to get the larger cup. The skinny cup holds less alcohol, so it saves the club money because most of their customers are not going to be buying bottle service. Now, over at the bottle booth, the reason they gave you the larger cup is so that they can pour you more alcohol. Because the faster your bottle runs out, the sooner they can come back and try to sell you another one. If you're a group of guys here in Vegas and you go to a nightclub or a gentleman's club and you've got your bottle table, it's very likely that you're gonna have a group of ladies at some point coming to join you to drink with you at the table. Let's say you're 4 guys and then you have 4 ladies with larger cups. That bottle at the table can go pretty quickly. And in a dark club with loud music, with lights going and the hectic atmosphere, the general admission customer who has their full cup is not going to notice that their full cup does not have as much alcohol in it as the guy 8 feet away who's sitting in a booth. The next topic is about employees saying how much you should tip them in any situation. This is really frowned upon across the hospitality industry, whether the employee is at a casino, hotel, restaurant, bar, nightclub, tour, etc., telling a customer that they should tip X amount of money. However, this can absolutely vary. Although rare, there can be times where you have an employee who's either in some sort of senior position, they're buddy-buddy with the manager, or they just don't care. And they may quote an exact amount that you should tip. Keep in mind, the fact that this is a tip and not a charge means you can tip any amount you want. So even if someone does give a suggestion, or even if they do give an outright quote, you don't have to. What a handful of employees do in some situations is insinuate in one form or another how much you should tip. And depending on the scenario, this could get the employee in trouble. Here's 2 examples. So I once had a visitor come here to town who, when I met up with this guy in person, he asked me about tipping valet after he just had interaction with valet. He asked about tipping up front, on the back end, both, what do you do? So I said, hey, I think it's good if you just go ahead and tip them something up front, because then that way, any worry that they would have about getting, a 0 when they bring the car up is gone, because they know you already gave them something. If you want to tip something on the back end when they bring the car up as well, hey, they'll be even happier with that. But the fact that you already tipped them up front is already gonna have them looking at you favorably. What happened to this person was that when he dropped off his car with the valet and got out, the attendant told him, just so you know, this is complimentary, but a lot of people do tip. This guy told me that he was planning to tip anyway, and he still did tip the valet, but he didn't feel good about it because he felt like the employee was trying to push him into doing it. And that is exactly why it's frowned upon for employees to do that. Because the way that customer felt in that situation is exactly how hospitality businesses don't want tourists to feel. They don't want them to feel like they're being coerced into something. The other situation came from a guy I talked to who used to be a host at the nightclubs and day clubs here on the Strip. What he would do to get guys to tip him is, let's say he had a group at the front door who bought the cheapest bottle booth they could that day at the club. Let's say at the time it was a $1,000 table. So he would walk them to their table from the front door. But what he would do is he would walk them down a path that would purposefully take them by all the more expensive booths that are closer to the stage or the dance floor or that kind of thing, so that by the time they got to their booth way in the back, they'd stop and ask him like, well, hey, how can we get one of those booths over there? From here, the host might be more indirect and say, well, man, it's Vegas, figure it out. Or he might be more direct and say, well, how about you throw me a number and we'll see if we can make something work. Either way, he's letting the customer know that here in Vegas, tipping is a way to have a better experience. So from here, the customer would like usually figure it out, and then they would offer to tip the guy. And then they would have a back and forth with what they would do. So the customer might say, okay, well, I'll tip you $100. Host would be like, nah. Okay, well, $250. You go, meh. $400. Getting closer. Okay, $500. Okay, you got it. I'll put you in this booth over here. In this situation, both parties ended up happy because the customer was able to get a better booth than he originally had for a discounted price, and the host was happy because he was able to get a tip for his work. Now, either way, this just gives you an idea of how different employees may handle situations differently. Now, if you're in a situation where you're really unsure what to tip, you can ask an employee, and I'll give you a few ideas of how that conversation could go. The most common outcome is the employee is probably gonna play it like really safe and just say, look, it's whatever you want, it's up to you, and just leave it at that. Or if their supervisor is okay with this, what they may do is give you an idea of what is customary but not required. So they may say common practice is X%, but it's your money, you tip whatever you feel comfortable with. That way they at least give you a general idea, but they're not pressuring you into something. Here's one from the casino. Blackjack dealers cannot give you their opinion on how to play a hand, but they can tell you what basic strategy says. A lot of people don't know this, but when you're gambling, you can ask the dealer questions while you're playing. Because despite what you've seen in movies and TV shows, dealers don't want you to lose.
You don't know when to quit, do you, Griswold? Here's an idea. Why don't you give me half the money you were gonna bet? Then we'll go out back, I'll kick you in the nuts, and we'll call it a day.
They would prefer that you win, because if you win, you're more likely to tip them. And if you win big, you're more likely to tip them really well. They don't get any kind of a bonus if you lose money. So if you're sitting down at the blackjack table and you're unsure whether or not you should hit, you can ask the dealer, and the dealer will respond with an answer based on playing basic strategy. They cannot give personal opinions, only from basic strategy. And in case you didn't know, there are cards that you can find online with basic strategy that you can print out, and you can even have them at the table with you. Caesars Entertainment own website actually says this, that you can bring your chart or your card to the table while you're playing, and it is 100% legal. There's no shortage of things that hotel staff here in Las Vegas have to keep quiet about. And one of those has to do with if a celebrity is staying in the hotel. This one is pretty straightforward and obvious. Vegas is a place that is no stranger to celebrities, whether they're just here for a visit, whether they're here as a headline performer, or whether they decide to move here permanently. And in my time working as an employee, I saw more than my fair share of celebrities here in Las Vegas. And this has to do with protecting their security and their privacy. Sometimes hotels, casinos, restaurants, clubs, etc. will have a VIP entrance away from the general public just for these very reasons. Several casinos right here on the Las Vegas Strip have private gambling rooms where you need a credit line of anywhere from $300,000 up to $1 million, and the general public will never see these rooms. And it's very understandable that these businesses would offer this kind of thing, because celebrities are just as human as everybody else. They want to take time to relax, have fun, and enjoy themselves on vacation or have time to themselves, just like you and I do. One of the big concerns for casinos here is cybersecurity. And sometimes these casinos do face hackers. And if these casinos are getting hacked, they absolutely do not want the public to know about it. This is something that rarely makes it into the mainstream media. The casinos and hotels here in Las Vegas have very valuable information about their guests and their players, and they do face their fair share of cyber attacks. What hackers try to do is gain access to the database so that they can start getting personal information like social security numbers, credit card numbers, driver's license numbers. Then they extort the casino into paying them. Take care, bro. This has made the news a handful of times. So like when the Venetian was hacked in 2014, or when Rancho Mesquite / Eureka Casino in Mesquite and the Brook were hacked in 2022. Although I gotta admit, probably the craziest story I was able to find was a case where an unnamed casino here in Las Vegas had its high roller database hacked through a fish tank. Needless to say, when the BLACKJACK conference comes to town every year, the IT departments in these casinos definitely have their work cut out for them. This one involves casino security guards who may or may not be so anxious to jump into dangerous situations for $16 to $18 an hour. In a place that likes to sell itself as Sin City and being an anything goes type of vacation spot, needless to say, security is obviously a very large part of making sure that these places are safe. But don't expect them to be there the second something bad happens on property. One, they cannot physically be present everywhere at all times. And two, if there is something that happens, say like a big fight breaks out, it may seem like a long time before anyone gets there because what they're doing is they're waiting for backup. From personal experience, my first job ever working security in a nightclub back in California, the first few months on the job, the head of security told us this in one of our meetings. He said, don't go by yourself trying to break up a fight because it's too dangerous. He said if the two groups fighting were dumb enough to get into it, then that's on them. But you wait for your backup to arrive before you go in there. And as one security guard on the strip told me, he said at $16 an hour, he's not gonna be the most anxious person to go and jump right in the middle of a big fight. This is something to keep in your mind for your own personal safety, not just in Las Vegas, but anywhere. If a fight does break out near you, it's probably best that you just get out of the danger zone, especially if security or law enforcement has not arrived yet to handle it, because you don't know how that situation could escalate. If in the rare situation that you find yourself to be the victim of an attack, it may be a while before someone does respond. Now I know that's not the most comforting thing to hear because a lot of damage can be done in that time frame. But if you talk to first responders, they'll tell you that's how certain situations have to be handled. Police departments typically want 2 officers responding to a domestic violence call because that situation can get really volatile real quick. Firefighters sometimes are not able to go into a building to try to save someone because it's too dangerous. Now I'm going to teach you guys about some of the lingo that gets used here in certain sectors of the hospitality industry in Las Vegas. And this one, I'm going to be focusing on the gentlemen's clubs. Some of these places use code words among staff members to relay information to each other right in front of you, and you wouldn't even know it. How do I know? Because I did it, and I was pretty good at it. A couple places here in town at least used to do this, and it's a much better way for your staff to work together. It's actually pretty smart. At the front door, whatever employees work up there, they're usually gonna be talking and engaging with customers coming in the building on a regular basis. Similar to a sales job, what you do at the front is you ask questions to gather information. So if a guy walked up to the front of the club, they'd greet him, ask him some questions like, hey man, where are you visiting from? Me being from California helped because that's a huge part of Las Vegas's tourism. So I checked the ID and I saw it said something like Atherton or Newport Beach or Redondo Beach or something like that. Like, okay, we're off to a good start here. You also ask other questions to pick up clues like, hey, what hotel are you staying at? They say, oh, we're staying over at the Wynn. Hey, good choice, nice, high-end luxury property. People who stay there are usually gonna be upper income. They say, hey, I stay at the Travel Lodge. Something like, what brings you to town was another common question to ask. If they say they're here for a conference, okay, they're here on some kind of business, they're probably a professional, they might have a higher income. But if they say they're here for like a teacher's conference, probably not gonna spend a whole lot. If they're here for something like construction, that's a good sign. Also, you'd ask something like, hey, you guys do anything fun so far since you've been here in town? And they might say, nah, we just hung out at the pool, went to a conference, went to dinner. Okay, doesn't necessarily give me a whole lot to go off of. They said, yeah, we went and we played golf the other day. Like, okay, good. Because people who play golf usually have higher incomes. When the guy would go to pay the entrance at the register, he pays with a credit card. Is he paying with a personal card or is he paying with a business card? Paying with a business card, that's another good sign. These are clues, indicators you're looking for to try to see if the person may have more expendable income that they would spend while they're there in the club. If the club has a good operation in place and their staff is working together, they're going to try to have the staff at the front door let the people inside know, hey, I've got a customer coming in who I think could spend a lot of money. That way the host inside could go grab a certain entertainer, one who's good at selling the VIP room, because not all of them are good salespeople, I can tell you that much. But they might just say, like, I have one guy I think is good coming in. Something like that, which is probably not the best way to put it. But others will have a way, like they'll actually have like different levels for how much, like how quality, how high they think the guy's potential is to spend a lot of money. So they might just say something simple like, hey, I got a group of one coming in. Probably doesn't mean a whole lot. Now if you say something like, I have a table of one, maybe that's a guy in his 30s, been in the workforce for a while, he doesn't have a ton of money, he's not rich, he's not wealthy, but he's got some disposable income to spend based on the interaction you have at the front door. That's your best assessment. You get the guy who's like 50 plus years old, and the guy owns a construction company, he owns a ranching operation, he owns lots of farmland. Yes, those people think like stockbrokers and stuff, or like the big clients who have money, or like, you know, athletes. Sometimes those people spend, but a lot of those other guys I just mentioned, those guys who are like in blue collar industries, those guys will spend. So a guy like that comes, they might say, hey, I have a party of one. Now, if you are at the front door and you hear the staff say, I got a group of one, table of one, party of one, you're not even gonna think about what that means. But to the staff inside, that can mean something very different. Just that one word that they switch can tell them the type of customer that they think they have coming in. Let's talk about a few things that table dealers in the casinos in general can't tell you. Now, they won't tell you who's been playing at their games, especially if the person's famous and especially if they're still in town and staying at the hotel and visiting that casino regularly. Down the road a little while afterwards, after the celebrity has been gone from the place, you may hear some chit chat about who was in town, who was playing at what casino, what games they were playing, and all that kind of thing. But while they're there, it really goes back to the whole point of trying to protect their safety and their privacy while they're here in town. They can't tell you if a player has lost or won, and they definitely can't tell you why the casino needs a social if you're going to be buying in for more than $9,999. Some casinos may not like to offer even money if you have blackjack against the dealer's ace. They typically want you to buy insurance because it works in the casino's favor. In order to protect themselves, table dealers will not tell you their last name. And in order to protect their coworkers, table dealers are not going to tell a player the days of the week that some coworker works, or the hours they work, or what days they typically have off, or anything like that. Now, if you ask for a certain dealer and the dealer happens to be working, then they'll likely say, hey, they're working over on, you know, this table over here today. Vegas is never really short on secrets, and today you guys got to learn a few. Thanks for watching this video. I'm Jacob, and this is My Life in Vegas.